All right. Yeah, so we have my favorite people on stage, the big gurus of the modular blockchains. Would love to, yeah, like, would you guys want to introduce yourself to the crowd? Do you want to go first, JB?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure it works. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm JB. I'm one of the co-founders of Milky Way. Milky Way started as a liquid staking provider for Celestia blockchain, and now we are building restaking for the modular ecosystem. And that's the project side. And a little bit about myself is prior to building Milky Way, I've been a software engineer for the past 10 years, and my crypto journey starts from early 2017. And I've worn many hats during my professional career. I was a CTO at once at a company called Cosmos Station, and I was a senior core engineer at multiple companies, including Tendermint, which is the founding company behind Cosmos. And I was also a security auditor, conducted dozens of smart contracts and mostly Cosmos SDK-based chains. Great to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about fixing, the fragmentation of modular blockchains.
Hey, I'm Magnus. I'm one of the co-founders of Skip. We build infrastructure for sovereign chains, whether those be L2s or L1s or anything in between. Prior to Skip, I was in crypto since like 2016. I worked on this company called Cent. They sold tweets as NFTs. If you saw the Jack Dorsey tweet sell for 2 mil at one point, that was us. Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Bora.
Hello, I'm Zahn, one of the co-founders of Initia. Initia is a network for interwoven rollups. We're holistically rebuilding how multi-chain networks should look, feel, and operate along the architecture, product, and economic stacks that tie them together through the Initia Layer 1 and an interwoven system of Layer 2s. Prior to this, I went to high school with Matt. I then went to college with this guy.
Whoa.
And then that one at the end there is building a chain on the interwoven stack.
Yeah, it's a real reunion here. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. I'm Matt. I'm the co-founder of Caldera. We're one of the fastest growing rollup ecosystems on Ethereum. Most people know us for our RAS product, which is rollups as a service. We help a lot of teams like Manta, ApeChain, Kinto, Karak, et cetera, all launch customizable L2s on Ethereum. Personally, like prior to this, did a lot of engineering in the crypto space on and off, also in the Ethereum space, mostly in the application layer, so things like fully on-chain games, on-chain social, that sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks for the intros, guys. Great to see the friends reuniting.
What about
Yeah.
your intro, Bora?
Hi, I am not part of Mitosis team, but I'm good friends with them. And I started as I started at a project called Skip with Mag, joining as a head of BD. So if you guys have any questions about Skip, please talk to me. Okay. So yeah, let's go for the first question. I'm just curious, guys. How do you bootstrap liquidity in the modular ecosystems? I think we can view it as like Milky Way, like as a protocol-specific like perspective, or like some ecosystem perspective. I guess you guys all have great insights about this. Do you wanna go first?
Sure, yeah. The position we take is, kind of a privileged one because we're helping people deploy rollups on top of Ethereum or rollups on top of rollups on top of Ethereum. And so with that, you basically get to tap into like the greatest, liquidity network that exists in blockchain right now, which is ETH-L1 or like other big L2s like Optimism or Arbitrum. And so when we're working with teams and they're bootstrapping liquidity, we just leverage that native bridge that's baked in the protocol. And then we just leverage basically all the other best protocols in the space for interoperability and bringing more liquidity on chain. Things like Hyperlane, I know Nam from Hyperlane's in the audience, Layer 0, other folks. And so we basically try to aggregate over all these different best-in-class solutions and provide those to our users.
I think at Initia, how we view it is what does a layer 1 need to do for this modular expansion that we're seeing. And one of the main things we see is it should provide liquidity, security, rewards, and users for the layer 2s that exist on top. So we have this system called Enshrine Liquidity on our layer 1, where we essentially take LP tokens from a DEX that's built into the chain, and we use that to secure the network. So we productively use assets while building a hub of major liquidity for basically all the rollups on top of Initia to easily tap into. And then we have a very specific view on the types of integrations we have. And so rather than allowing multiple different types of third-party bridges to exist within the ecosystem, we just work with layer 0 and IBC so that you avoid all types of liquidity fragmentation.
Yeah, I mean, we build this product called Skip Go, which is a like one-click transfer and swap between any two tokens and any two chains. We do about 50% of all the IBC volume. I think it's honestly very challenging, right? Like, I don't think we have like a good solution right now to like bootstrapping liquidity in these sort of like multi-chain world. Like, it's been very difficult. The first people to try to do this, I would say, are the Cosmos chains to sort of like break away from, you know, the rest of the crowd, where there was like a bunch of native liquidity on ETH-L1. I think one of the big challenges is when you have execution on so many different places, it's really hard to have liquidity have sort of like synchronous use cases, right? Because oftentimes liquidity is in different places, and to call, you know, like let's say get it to, you know, a DeFi chain and actually have it do something and then go back to a different chain, all of that requires a new set of tooling, which just hasn't really been built, I think. And so I think oftentimes what I see happening are liquidity solutions work really well within an ecosystem. Like, for example, I think they'll work really well within Initia or within like Caldera rollups. But it's really hard then when you go cross ecosystem and to make that work. And oftentimes that's where you sort of have like really predatory bridges that charge way too much money or take way too long. And I think like, yeah, this is not a solution here, but I think this is a big problem. And I don't think we have like good answers out there right now.
Is that why you're such an IBC maxi?
Who's to say I'm an IBC maxi, bro? No, yeah, I like IBC, but it's not necessarily the answer here. IBC itself is like, you know, first of all, extremely difficult to implement, and it's not something that I see becoming like a first-class citizen everywhere like it was originally intended to be. I think honestly, it's just like you need to throw like higher level abstractions over all of these things and some kind of shared standards. I think there's like a cool effort by Li-Fi and some other people to like start to create these, which I would be interested in.
Yeah, from my side, I think it makes more sense to respond to that question from a protocol-specific perspective on Milky Way. So we are providing liquid staking solution for TIA, which is the base coin of Celestia blockchain, as I have explained when I introduced myself. You know, we launched our product last December as the first, and we're still the largest liquid staking provider for TIA. And there are a few different players out there, Stride, and there's going to be a drop protocol. So there will be multiple liquid staking tokens for TIA. This is exactly why we're building restaking, so that, you know, our restaking protocol can allow, you know, whether it's a base coin of, you know, base coin TIA or LSTs of different types of TIA to extend crypto economic security to the wider, you know, actively validated services. It's another buzzword that we need to understand, and, you know, if you want to know the concept of the restaking. And since we're built in one of the interwoven stack, so like John mentioned, so there are going to be out-of-the-box interoperability protocols. So whether it's an IBC or whether it's an layer 0. So I think it's good to have some constraint within the protocol itself, so that it limits, you know, the fragmentation of, you know, it kind of prevents from, you know, fragmentation of a liquidity.
Thanks. I think we've kind of briefly mentioned with how our like projects are kind of dealing with the removing barriers of moving liquidity assets. But like, Matt, I think you will have a little bit of additional things you want to mention about like how do you deal with like removing barriers, because you have a lot of rollups integrated with Caldera, and do you want to tackle a little bit about that?
Yeah. So yeah, for us, like we are trying to move from like a less opinionated approach to a more opinionated approach. We've spent like the last year or so working with all sorts of different interoperability providers, figuring out which ones are the best, and then ideally we do want to eventually like aggregate over all those providers to provide like a fairly unified experience to all of our chains. When you're talking about barriers, there's kind of like two sides of it. There's the dev barriers, and like that, I guess both like developers integrating and also developers launching chains. And so we've put in a lot of work to just sort of streamline that process. Like if you're a new chain, you're launching a rollup for a game, it's not necessarily easy to get like most interrupt providers on that process. So we work with a lot of teams just to like make that as easy as possible. Ideally like one click or automatic. And then on the user side, yeah, we want to provide like a unified interface so that a user doesn't need to think on the level of like individual interrupt providers, but instead they can think on the level of like chains. I want to go from X chain to Y chain. How do we do that and route the best way?
Wait, can you show me on the meta layer?
Yeah, that's TBD. So the meta layer is basically it's the word we're using to describe all these efforts. Basically, liquidity unification across all the Caldera chains. Stay tuned for the technical details.
Yeah, so I think for Inisha, one of the things that we did is we built a layer 0 module in Cosmos SDK, and that just comes out of the box on every one of the rollups on Inisha, despite what VM they're in. So we support EVM, MoveVM, and WASM VM, and all of those essentially just have this enshrined layer 0 module within. We're big on enshrinement, because I think too many choices is a pain in the ass. And so you launch a rollup on Inisha, and you basically have all the ways to bootstrap liquidity through layer 0, IBC, native USDC, and CCTP over these guys. And you're basically just set. And then the next piece is how do you build the right product on top of all of this that can basically seamlessly bring in the users. And what's nice about owning this complete framework of layer 1 and layer 2 design is that we can build those product pieces. So we have a wallet widget. It lets you connect to any EVM wallet, Cosmos wallet, in-app wallets. We also have this really nice bridge widget that just aggregates all the routes into a rollup. It would suck if you launched a chain and then said, bridge to the initial layer 1 through this front end, then bridge to my rollup through this other front end. So we can just kind of abstract over all of that through these types of pieces. And what's nice is you slowly psyops users into thinking, this is just how I move between applications when you're actually moving across chains and different interoperability standards underneath.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about removing the barriers to like launching rollups or launching sort of like sovereign separate compute environments. I think for me, it just seems like this is just getting really good. Like basically every L2 ecosystem, every L1 that wants to have L2s is attempting to sort of create solutions for all the main problems that L2s used to have. And by problems, I mean access to like basic piece of infrastructure, right? Block Explorer, wallets, like liquidity solutions, bridges, like all these different oracles, all these different things are now just being provided out of the box. And so I think like, as we saw with the expansion of AWS into Lambda and just like serverless designs, now a lot of applications can just boot up with a lot more, which hopefully, I mean the hope here is that they stop differentiating on whether they have an oracle or whether they don't, or whether they have liquidity solution or whether they don't, and more so differentiate on the application layer. And so I think like probably to answer your question, like I actually think like this is being solved. This is one of the problems that I see being solved extremely well so far in crypto.
Yeah, I kind of forgot the question, but like, is it about like how do we overcome the barriers of liquidity
Yes.
in general? Yeah, I definitely agree that it's being solved. There are a lot of projects working on the liquidity aggregators, and there are, as we see, there are multiple cross-chain and interoperability protocols out there, but there's no clear winner in this industry. So from an L1 or L2, builder's perspective, we don't know, what to choose from. We just choose from based on the knowledge that we have. Is it stable, or does it support the ecosystems that we want to target? So it's It's still a bit early, but it's being solved. So in the future, there's going to be a standard, I believe. And then, from an L1 and L2's perspective, we're all going to, use this like standard that's going to, I guess, interoperable between, chains, whether it's L1 or whether it's L2.
What I think is cool is that within modular land, we're doing this so much better than monolithic land. Like, there are still so many monolithic chains that literally suck to bridge to and get to. Like, there's these move chains that don't support things like MetaMask. You have to use these different front ends from the Layer 0 bridge or the Aptos bridge website or Portal's front end. Then once you get there, you have these 2 different types of tokens for USDC. Like, they're not good at doing this job. And I think what's really cool about all the people here is within a modular world where there are so many chains, we've just really prioritized solving this problem.
Zon, one question for you. So I always wonder why like Optimism or Arbitrum haven't yet implemented IBC. And then someone explained it to me as like actually introducing a really easy way to bridge is kind of like introducing a much lower switching cost. And it doesn't make sense when you have a very strong competitor and like a bunch of smaller people to actually introduce that switching cost and make it simpler, because the larger chains only have stuff to lose and the smaller ones only have stuff to gain. Do you think that's actually at play for some of these chains that, like make it like very difficult to bridge out?
I think that could make sense for the ones that like have traction and users and are scared to lose it. But there's still so many monolithic chains that just don't have traction and don't have users. Like, take a look at Aptos, right? They probably have like a few 100 million TVL in comparison to Optimism, which has billions. And it sucks to get there and use their applications. So I think that is an answer. But I think if that's the reason you're retaining users, then it's not a really strong one.
Nice. I kind of wanted our time for a little bit of spicy takes. So my original question was like how interop between like multiple execution layers should work, but let's kind of just pass out on that and let's just move on to some spicy takes. Okay, so L1s versus L2s. Do you guys have any spicy takes on that? Because I just feel like, Matt will meet like tons of L2s and like Initia is kind of in the process of like, having L2s on top of Initia, and like Skippy is also like a lot of L1s, and like, connecting with IBC. So I'm just kind of curious your kind of spicy takes on that.
I'm probably
Yeah.
the only one supporting L1s here, so. But you guys go first. I got to see what I'm up against.
Sure. Yeah. I think I've probably got the coldest take out of anyone on the stage, maybe, or the most consensus take, just because there's been so much momentum behind L2s. But like in our view, we think of like, the question of like L1s versus L2s. It's like an implementation detail. Like the goal is to run a blockchain, and right now for the vast majority of teams, relying on the security and the decentralization of a chain like Ethereum and also the liquidity is going to be a better option than trying to do that all on your own. That said, like, I mean, for us, we're not like so opinionated that we think no L1 should ever exist. Like, I wouldn't tell the Initia team, hey, you should have built Initia as an L2 and then you should do L3s. Like, I think there are good reasons to do it. But a lot of the teams we're working with, like, they don't want to build an L1. They're like building a blockchain to achieve some business goal. And if you're trying to do that, I think L2s are just like clearly the most efficient, cheapest, simplest way to do it.
Yeah, I think I'm very much in that camp of you build an L2 because you want to build a blockchain and own your stack. It's just way easier to launch an L2 than it is to launch a layer 1. I think Magnus's take is all the stuff they're doing.
Bro, don't front run me here.
Is to make it easy to launch these layer 1s. Real?
I'd say that's right. Yeah, I mean, so people talk about the L1 premium, right? And like this comes up when I'm talking to teams. They're like, the reason we don't want to become an L2 is because there's an L1 premium. I don't really know what that means, and I've like thought about this a lot. It seems to me that as long as the most valuable things in crypto are L1s, and all of the teams that tell people to build L2s are L1s themselves, I think a lot of people are going to be like, maybe I should be that other thing that you are, which is really valuable. And maybe it's just like a reflection of that. But my sense is basically L1s will never be as easy to launch as L2s. It just doesn't make any sense. Like an ecosystem of L1s is extremely hard to coordinate together, as we've learned from Cosmos. And other folks are going to try their hand at this, I think. But that's not to say that I don't think L1s could be significantly easier to launch. I think the only L1 launching stack so far, which is the Cosmos SDK and Tendermint, has been like underinvested in for years and still remains really good. And my hope would be essentially there can be a much more unified structure around these things, and for it to become more clear, given more investment in L1s, what their specific properties are and when you might want to use them. So my take on this of when you might want an L1 over an L2 is if you want a fully self-owned operator set, right? You want your own validators. A lot of people say don't build an L1 because you shouldn't have to have your own validators. But sometimes you actually do want that because you want your operators to do something really specific for you, right? Like run an Oracle. Or you want your operators to do something like, have a credible geo-distributed decentralized story. So that was important, for example, for DYDX as far as
what do you think about shared sequencers then? Sorry, not shared sequencers, but decentralized sequencer sets on L2s?
So, why not just become an L1 at that point?
Well, I think there's still a plethora of stuff you have to deal with as an L1.
Sure, that's fair. So if you have a decentralized sequencer set, I guess to me, different from a shared sequencer, right? Shared sequencers are just I'm sort of bootstrapping off this other L1s usually, sequencer set. But if it's a decentralized sequencer, are you just rotating the centralized sequencer around and around?
It's like a POA chain.
But that's not credible decentralization, right? That's just redundancy. Mm-hmm. I would say a real decentralized sequencer set means you have consensus over that sequencer set. And I would say that's, now you're kind of just just use Tendermint kind of thing. So yeah, I think that would be, do you agree with that, roughly?
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, so that's sort of my take. I'll just leave it there because I don't want to let other people speak.
My take on that question is, from an L2 builder's perspective, I guess I come from a Cosmos background. I spent the most of my career within the Cosmos ecosystem, so I'm very much familiar with the Cosmos SDK framework, how powerful the framework is, in terms of composability and flexibility and sovereignty. And so we were actually, exploring options, whether we wanted to be, L1 or L2. But, there are certainly pros and cons, but we think that, bootstrapping a validator set and, taking considerable amount of time to kind of communicate with them, giving them the guidance and whether, I think that was expensive and resource, intensive since we were kind of a small team. And also, at the end of the day, we want to keep the sovereignty, keep the composability, and also we want to keep the alignment with the Celestia blockchain, with the concept of modularity. So that's where Inisha, blockchain, comes in. And I was very impressed by the work that Inisha team has been building over the past 2 years, and they actually we believe that they're actually solving the problem of interoperability and becoming an internet of blockchains. So that's what made us to decide becoming L2. So we can keep the Cosmos SDK framework as well. So yeah. I guess that's my take.
This is a really good panel.
I'm blatantly shilling Inisha here.
For the record, I'm also bullish on Inisha. One thing that I think is very true right now is it's becoming unclear what an L1 is versus an L2. This is if you guys ever follow Togrel on from Scroll, he has a lot of definition arguments about stuff like this, but the things that I used to think L1s did, now L2s seem to do them, right? Have a token, have your own native token as your gas token, or control your own governance, or control your own sequencer, or have full ownership over your economics. These things that used to be very, the pitch points of building an L1, at least within Cosmos, are now much more, you can do these as L2s. And so like it's very unclear to me if like this distinction is going to last much longer. Like I kind of think these things are just going to the arguments are going to be different. I think the things that matter the most to me though is that the most ambitious builders will want to own their economics. They will want to have, you know, they want to have full ownership over all their sequencer fees probably, or like something like that. And then also I think they'll just going to not want to be limited by anything, right? They're not going to want to have like another token or another chain that limits them if they have really big ambitions. But that's not always true for everyone.
I think Matt kind of mentioned like if like the disadvantage of launching on L2, like it can be limited by the capacity of L1s. Like Matt, do you have any takes on that?
Oh yeah, if L2s are limited by the capacity of the L1, I would say like certainly yes in theory, but I think it's unlikely that the L1, like in the foreseeable future, that'll actually be the bottleneck. You look at like Ethereum, right? People view DA as the bottleneck. They ship blobs. There's all these third-party DA providers. So now like the real bottleneck is like settlement. You know, the transactions that are like posting state roots to Ethereum, and then maybe like in the case of ZK rollups, proofs, et cetera. There is so much capacity for that, and it's like, I think it's really unlikely we ever saturate that.
Matt, side question. Do you think we made L1 blobs too cheap on Ethereum?
So I think like it depends on who you ask. One of there's this certain type of person, and I don't think they're wrong, but I just don't have a lot of empathy for them, that like thinks that like what Ethereum should be doing is like trying to make the ETH token like a stock for Ethereum, like try to, you know, maximize cash flows. I think from that perspective, yes, like, you know, but blobs, like they are cheap. It's not that expensive from like a first principles distributed systems perspective, I think, to basically just like, you know, propagate a few megabytes, right, at a time to a, you know, relatively small amount of nodes in the grand scheme of things, have them retain that for like 14 days. So to me, it feels accurately priced, but I do understand the case where people would say this allows rollups to be more parasitic to ETH. I think there's like some credence there. I just care very little personally about ETH as a stock, and you know, I care more about ETH as a technology. What do you think?
He sold all his ETH.
Okay,
ETH has
we
been
can
dumped.
talk about.
I am irresponsibly concentrated in ETH, though I guess most of my net worth is in Caldera, so conflict of interest.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the alpha. We just have like we kind of have like 1 or 2 minutes. Just if you guys have any questions from the crowd, we just want to receive one more question and wrap up this panel. Any questions? I see some cool people sitting on the crowd like Oli, Chris. Okay, yes.
Maybe you guys could just go one by one and just describe like a particular challenge that you. Maybe you could just go one by one and just describe a particular challenge that you overcame over the last, few years in the blockchain industry that you're proud of.
Some challenges.
I think that was asked us on an interview once.
And what was your answer?
Well, it's probably changed since then, but actually I don't have an answer yet. If you have anyone else.
Okay, one of the problems that we did recently was we broke IBC in the sense that IBC relayers are like, they're built for chains that process very few cross-chain transactions right now. I think some guy was flexing on me that his IBC relayer could do 10,000 requests per hour. And I was like, that's only 2.7 per second. We were doing like hundreds of transactions per second during our testnet. And so we just rebuilt a whole new IBC relayer system that can do these interchain transfers really, really fast. Voice crack. And I think that was cool.
What about Matt? Have any?
Yeah, I think for us, like, since we're kind of more of like, we like to call ourselves like a vending machine. We're like offering different stacks, different DA layers, et cetera. The kind of ever-present problem is just like prioritization and separating the signal from the noise. Like, it's crypto, everybody says like, hey, I have a working solution. 90% of the people who say that don't actually have a working solution. And so like making sure that our customers understand that, our team understands that, and like we're allocating our time correctly, just always a challenge.
Yeah, I'd say like the the thing that I'm probably the most proud of, and probably one of the biggest things that we've accomplished at Skip, is just deploying like production scale products. I think it's actually quite rare in this industry to have like products that work extremely well, are not buggy, and aren't security vulnerabilities. And to have those work consistently for years at a time and be able to be relied upon as a primitive. There's not so much of this. And so I think one of the things, if nothing else, I was proud of, or that we overcame, was really putting in the time and the effort to like get to production scale for our products.
As a very happy Skip user, I'm glad you did that.
Thank you, Son.
Yeah, on my side, I can't really think of any big challenges that we are going through right now. Like every day, we're going through minor challenges, whether it's a technical or whether it's internal team issue or communication issue. I think as a joke, it's handling when token question is very challenging.
When token.
Yeah, so we've been running points program for many months. So we're asked a lot of questions every time, when token, when points program is ending, and etc. So that's the hardest
Soon.
part.
Always soon.
So besides when token, guys, if you want to launch a roll-up on Caldera, or your sovereign, L1 on top of Initia, or with using Skip, you can always talk to these people. They'll be around. Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, for taking your time. And yeah, let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.